advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. In addition to our normal show, we have a special guest joining us a little bit later. We've got NBC Sports NFL draft expert Connor Rogers to help us break down some of the top quarterbacks, some of the top prospects. These are guys, Joshua, that we love in college. You know how I feel about the draft. I'm always like, oh, we're giving away like our children. Like we're like handing them off to the NFL and usually to like the worst organizations in the NFL.
Yes.
Like, please don't break them. Don't break them.
Unfortunately. And then you have a whole bunch of people who talk about these folks that haven't really watched them for 3 or 4 years. And Connor is one of the great ones who is like super in on college football. So very excited for that conversation.
He is. So that'll be a little bit later in the show. We'll have our game previews, everything else still to come. But we're going to start, as we've been doing on these midweek episodes, with a breakdown of the college football playoff rankings. We got a new set of rankings on Tuesday night. Pretty much as expected. I think I nailed my projection. I just missed which ACC team they were going to slot in there. And the committee decided to flip Miami and Georgia Tech this week. Guess they're not concerned about Miami's slow starts and whatever. Okay, it's fine. That is an AQ spot anyway. They have to bump somebody out because they're ranked so low. So the rest of it looks pretty normal, but you are seeing a couple people pointing out, hey, Utah feels really high. Well, how do you justify that? Oh, let's put Cincinnati in there at number 25. So you give them a top 25 win there. You can always make things look better on the back end of the rankings if you really want certain teams where you want them in the top half. You also see USF get in there as a group of 5 team. There was no group of 5 team ranked last week. So we know obviously by default that they are the top ranked G5 champion. So they're in that AQ spot. Also don't see Iowa fall out after losing a close one to Oregon. And Pittsburgh, of course, is also still in there. So is Tennessee for some reason. And then you see a flip. There was early in the rankings after Texas Tech beat BYU. They jumped up ahead of Ole Miss. So they're right behind Georgia now. And then BYU only fell to 12. Wait, am I reading that right? Yes. 12.
Yeah,
I can't read the numbers. Okay.
I know.
Ahead of Utah because of the head-to-head result, which is also something that I predicted. So let's look at the bracket. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that Texas is now the last team into the field as an at-large. They've got a big month ahead, started with Georgia this week, and then obviously Texas A&M later in the month. So they've got all these opportunities to play their way in. But right now, the last at-large team in, you see Miami as the 11 seed as the ACC champion and South Florida in there at 12. But Joshua, it's very similar to last week. I think people were wondering if Texas A&M could leapfrog Indiana or get up a little higher. The top 4 stayed the same. Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, Alabama. It's been that way in a lot of the polls and in these rankings for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we expected here. Generally, I'm starting to look at the way that this thing is shaping up in like different pathways. And I'll say this, like one of the things that really annoys me about this exercise in this weird part of the year is you have a team in Miami who is slotted in there, and I don't think they control their own path in the ACC.
They don't.
I feel like it's weird to put them as a placeholder for that very reason, but that's neither here nor there. You mentioned Texas. I don't think they have to win both the Georgia game and the A&M game to be an at-large here, which I think is an intriguing way for them to get in. I think that if they were close against Georgia, maybe came up short, but then beat A&M, who is the number 3 team in the country, it certainly feels like with 3 losses, that's a team that could be in the college football playoff as an at-large. What do you think about that?
I think that if they go 9-3, they're going to be the team we talk about. Like that's going to be the whole debate. And I'm with you because I think if one of those wins is Georgia or A&M, it's a top 5 win, one of the best wins anyone has. And yes, they'll be the top 3 loss team. That will be the team that is right there. And maybe not even right there, maybe just in, because again, like I think you're going to see blemishes on other resumes and some of these teams might kind of fall back a little bit. I'm with you on Miami. It's weird to put them as the highest ranked team and like they get slotted in when the teams behind them are way more likely to make the ACC championship game and like actually play for the automatic qualifier spot. I do think it's worth pointing out the nightmare scenario for the ACC. It's pretty obvious, right, Joshua? It's Duke.
Well, now don't get ahead of yourself because we got to imagine some things a little bit later in the show.
Right. Sorry. I didn't look ahead in the rundown.
Let's not jump ahead too far. It's all good. But let me say this while we still have the bracket up for the people that are watching here. The top part of that bracket feels like hell, and this is part of the evaluation that you start to get into when you're looking at this in like different pathways and like what would you rather be seated. So in the top part of that bracket, you would have South Florida, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State. Woof. The bottom part of this bracket has Miami, which again, like Miami, Texas Tech, Texas, Ole Miss, A&M, and Indiana. You tell me where you would want to be.
It's going to matter. This is why Alabama fans and A&M fans have been really riled up about seeding. Because again, it doesn't matter. A lot of the top 4 teams we're talking about, hopefully we're going to get to see them square off in the Big Ten and the SEC championship games, and we'll get some answers here. But you are correct. It's going to matter what the seeding ends up looking like because of the path, especially when you have these non-traditional teams or teams that we just think are pretty deeply flawed or have some obvious exploitation.
The thing that I think a lot of people are looking at too is like the blue chip aspect of it. And I know that's not what wins games, but if I'm a coach, I would rather play a team where I know my players are better than theirs than a team where the talent's equated. And
you probably have more depth, right? It's blue chip and depth. And that's 100%. What you need for multiple wins through the college football playoff. So we'll continue to follow all of this. Obviously, it's going to continue to change. We'll get to the ACC disaster scenario in just a second, because it is one of the questions of what's going to happen here. I think the idea of where the ACC falls, where the group of 5 falls. Again, we hadn't had a team that was ranked. So last week they tell us Memphis would have been the team. This week, we're like, okay, I think it's South Florida, but what about JMU? Do they have a shot? They're not in the rankings. So we just don't know like what that separation looks like, but you still have to feel pretty good about the American champion. And then I think it's time to imagine that, Joshua. So let's get into it. Imagine that presented by Xfinity. Paint us a picture of like Jim Phillips would be the ACC commissioner, sitting in a dark room in ACC headquarters, like listening to emo music because this thing went so badly. What is it? What has to happen for the ACC to not make the college football playoff?
Well, it would start with Duke beating Virginia this weekend. And then, they have UNC and Wake, and they go to the ACC championship and actually win it. So you're looking at a 9-4 football team who potentially would be behind the American champ and behind potentially a JMU out of the Sun Belt or whatever the case is. And now you're like, okay, does the ACC actually get in? Like, I don't think people understand that the Power 4 conferences don't have to be in this thing. It usually works out that they will be because they have the better teams with the better rosters and the better resources and the better, not even the better coaches, but the more highly paid coaches, maybe proven.
And the metrics are going to favor them because they will be 100%. Power conference schedules. Yes.
100%. But this is a scenario where like I could look at Duke, if they win the ACC, like they still might be behind 2 group of 5 teams in the rankings, which is really chaotic. And then you start to ask the question, can they not get an AQ, but Miami gets in there as an at-large? If they're sitting there as a 10-2 team and they're number 15 right now in the rankings and teams in front of them still lose and they make it into the top 10, is that the cut line? Because you'd have to put the 2 other conference champs in there. You would assume that if everything's chalky on conference championship weekend, that the 3 power conference teams that actually do get the auto bids, like, is Miami in there at 10 and 10's the cut line for an at-large, right? Like that to me is the full chaos scenario.
That is a full chaos scenario. Great point. Right. Because it will be 10 because 11 will be the 4th highest ranked conference champion. And then the 5th will be at 12 if they're not in the top 12. So that's a really good point. I like this chaos theory. And let me throw in one more piece to it. Let's say Tulane wins the American. So then you have a head-to-head result
head-to-head
as well with Tulane and Duke.
It's amazing. I mean, this is, for all the things I don't like about the 12-team playoff, like I want this to happen. I want as much chaos as we can get. Give me every nasty scenario you can think of, put it in there, and then make people have to make decisions and defend in the whole deal.
Well, we say this all the time, but because these conferences are so big, you don't have like the head-to-head results that you actually need. Like people are playing different schedules even within the same conference. And it makes all of this stuff really complicated. It's all while the tiebreakers are insane and super complicated for the ACC and the Big 12, but even in the bigger, like the Big 10 is 18 teams. This is why Oregon got named the Big 10 champion on a Tuesday. You have to like go through all of these different like permutations and spreadsheets, and it's crazy. And so you are going to be in these situations where you're at the mercy of some of these crazy outside forces making decisions for you. It's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out for the ACC and the Group of Five. You said you like chaos. Let me give you repeat chaos. And I don't know if it's not necessarily knock a team out of the playoff like it did last year. But my imagine that Ole Miss has trouble with Florida again. We all know what happened last year. Third loss of the year. It knocked Ole Miss out of the playoff. It was a shocker. It was one of the wins that helped Billy Napier keep his job for a little bit longer, another offseason. Now, this one I think would be even more shocking if it happens, or at least if they keep it close. Because again, maybe they'll just be annoying enough that we're going to end up having to watch Ole Miss Florida. This is a team that was basically lifeless a week ago when they lost to Kentucky. They benched DJ Lagway again. But like this is still also a Florida team that kind of out of the blue beat Texas. This is a Florida team that still has talent on the defensive side of the ball. I know DJ Lagway is a problem, and apparently he still might start this game. He leads FBS with 12 interceptions.
I feel bad for DJ Lagway.
I do too.
Developed.
No, he is not. And if not, he has gotten worse. And we'll probably see the backup true freshman Tramell Jones Jr. as well, who, by the way, like it's not like he did anything that was particularly better than DJ Lagway did at Florida. But I'm just saying, Lane Kiffin does this. There's like an inexplicable result. They will sometimes just lose lose to teams that they shouldn't, that they're more talented than, that if they just played their game, they'll beat. And there's a Florida team that, we're not sure if they've given up on their season. We'll find out. We'll find out really soon if they are. But they rolled over last week. It would be the most unpredictable, but also college football thing if suddenly they're neck and neck against Ole Miss, who we penciled into the playoff in the fourth quarter.
You want another piece for this chaos scenario?
Yes.
If you're Florida or one of the many schools looking for a coach, but Florida in particular, and you take it to Ole Miss, how am I supposed to feel about that? Like, do I want the Lane train? Yeah, like I 2 years in a row. Why would I hire you?
It's also a good point of distractions and dynamics and things that could play into this game. So
it's weird.
That was Imagine That presented by Xfinity. We'll see what ends up happening. We're also going to continue to track and see what might happen with the NFL draft, which is going to be right around the corner as soon as we get through college football season. You mentioned this off the top. We love Connor Rogers at NBC Sports because he really watches college football. He knows these prospects and knows what they're doing every Saturday. No one better to talk to in season about draft prospects than Connor. Here is our conversation with Connor Rogers. Excited to bring in Connor Rogers, our NBC Sports draft guru. Connor, there's less than a month left in the regular season now. I think we know Arch Manning is not going to be the number one quarterback taken in the draft next year. But we have learned a lot about the quarterbacks in particular as we look to the 2026 NFL draft. First of all, thanks for coming on the show. Always great to be with you. And second of all, let's talk quarterbacks. It's the sexiest position. Everyone always wants to know who's going to be QB1.
It's nice to see you guys on a non-Saturday. This is a good feeling. We should do this more often.
We should.
Listen, this quarterback class, I've been warning people a little bit, at least right now, don't manufacture a top pick, right? And there's promise. The thing is, Arch probably goes back to school anyway, and he didn't have the start that would have made him a bona fide top pick anyway. You look at Dante Moore, who has all the tools in the world from Oregon. He's somebody that I think you look at the trajectory he was on, he would be in that conversation, but a lot of rumblings that he's going to go back to school as well. Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza, a lot to like about both of these guys. Simpson would be my top guy today. He has a lot of football left to be played as a one-year starter. We want to see him in some of the bigger games, especially throughout the playoff. So this is a class right now where when I break down my top 5 players, there's not a quarterback in it. And it doesn't mean that these guys can't be a number 1, a number 2 overall pick, because the nature of the NFL is if you love a guy or even if you like a guy and believe in him at the quarterback position, you often take him where you're slotted. Sometimes you even go up and trade for him. And that's how the Titans felt with Cam Ward last year. I liked a lot of things about Cam Ward. Strong arm, great mentality, can create in and out of structure. He wasn't the prototypical number 1 overall pick, but he played his way into that. And that's what these guys are looking to do right now. But we still have questions to answer with all of them that you're not going to see them number 1 overall on a lot of big boards at this moment.
Couple follow-ups to that. So how far down your big board do you have to go before you would see the first quarterback?
I think you'd see Simpson now in that 10 to 15 range. That's what I would call it. And we kind of have to assume Moore's in this class till he's not. Mm-hmm. So he would be in that 15 to 20 range. I haven't updated a board since the beginning of October. And so much changes week to week with these guys, which is the dangerous game of guys that haven't played a lot of college football. What's interesting with Mendoza is because you see opinions all over the place on him. Yep. When I watched his tape at Cal over this summer, I didn't have him as a top 5 quarterback in this class, but thought he was somebody with tools that would go on day 2 if the draft was today. He's got a good arm. He plays pretty well from the pocket. He can throw into tight windows. I don't think he's a great athlete to play out of structure, and you're asked to create so much in today's NFL. I do think there's times where he's still been a little erratic with his decision-making, seeing underneath defenders. So for me right now, he's a back end of round 1 guy. I don't think he's viewed that way, though. I think a lot of people are expecting him to be a top 10 pick at this moment. And I think that's a little bit of the nature of the quarterback curve. So once again, these guys have talent, but maybe they're more in the conversation that the NFL had Jackson Dart in at the end of last year, where, hey, somebody is going to like this guy at the end of round 1 and take him. But the reality is, guys, we know if any of these 3 have a strong next 6 weeks, all of a sudden they're the number 1 overall pick.
Well, Connor, like what I'm thinking about is you're talking about this and how low someone could go. Is that also because of how many young quarterbacks have been taken in recent years? I mean, like it feels like everyone's starting these guys really early because then we end up having this conversation about like quarterback development in college, or, you know, being put in a bad position when you're going to fire your head coach anyway, and you still draft a first-year quarterback, rookie quarterback. But is it some of that, or is like the quarterback class not viewed as a super strong class coming into this draft?
It doesn't have the depth, and it does have guys that people still feel like the jury is still out on, right? Coming in this year, a lot of people thought Lenore Sellers could be a future top 10 pick, and things have gone wrong for him, but also things out of his control. It just feels like it's a mess there for his development where you'd like to see him go back. John Mateer got hurt. John Mateer had one of the highest trajectories out of all of these guys. People were like, oh, I thought this guy before he transferred was an early day 3, late day 2 pick. And now we could be talking about John Mateer in the first round. And it just hasn't been the same since he's been hurt.
Garrett Nussmeier. Like I'm thinking about like all of these.
Drew Aller.
Like all of these guys who came back to college that were, you know, potentially like everyone's like, oh, they're going to improve their draft stock. Probably hurt it.
No, it's a fine line. It is. If Drew Aller declared last year, I think he would have went at the end of round 1 or the top of the second round. And once again, like just because that's rich for me doesn't mean it was rich for the NFL. Nussmeier is somebody that everybody thought he had the best floor of all these guys, and he just got benched. So it just goes to show you, I do believe a little bit of you have to strike while the iron's hot, which why it makes me wonder, can Ty Simpson avoid that? I mean, if Ty Simpson finishes the year on a high note, is he going to be the guy to say, you know what, I only started 1 year, I'm going to go back to school in a class where he can easily be the first quarterback taken, easily. Mendoza's not a lock to be that. And so I think and next year's quarterback class might be 2027, might be extremely deep, where maybe you want to avoid that if you're a guy that's already a lock to go top 10. So teams are always, you know, it's interesting. Teams are trying to find the right line of who needs to sit, who needs to play. The Giants had this master plan that Jackson Dart wouldn't have to play. He was in a couple of weeks, right? Like Cam Ward is in a awful, awful environment right now. The Saints waited a little while for Tyler Shuck to get in there. Tyler Shuck was also in college football for 7 years. So that's a different conversation where you look at these guys, people are just going to need a plan for them. And I know that sounds so dumb because you always need a plan for a quarterback, but guys like this, whether it's the lack of experience or things they need to clean up or the speed of the game, they just need a real plan for these guys. That's not a 1-year plan, but a 3-year plan.
The Ty Simpson leave comeback thing I think is so intriguing. He's a coach's kid too, and so I think he values the idea of development. The NFL is not a great place to develop, but after watching what's happened to guys that came back this year, I would be gone if I were him.
That's what I'm with you too. Like Kate Klubnik was another one.
Oh
like,
man,
so many names.
These were all like what top 5 projected, or like in the mix for QB1 for next year.
Without a doubt.
And I get it. You can make money now. So, maybe you stick around. Like we've seen
but
that.
It ain't top 10 overall, buddy. Like that's,
and also like if your personal draft stock falls that much at the most important position, it feels like you gotta go. You gotta go. Like we should go back in time and tell Drew Aller after the playoffs.
No, he could have gone. Let me ask you this real quick on the quarterbacks. Like, what are some of the red flags as you evaluate these guys? Like I watch Mendoza and we talk about it every weekend. When he gets the rush, he's looking at the rush. He's not stepping into throws. Ty Simpson, for all the great things that he does, I think sometimes maybe he tries a little too hard to create, right? And like offensive line maybe hasn't been great for him, but like what do you see as a red flag maybe when you're looking at these quarterback prospects?
Yeah, so coming into the year with Mendoza, starting with your first point, I wrote down this summer, he took 40 sacks in 2024. And I understand a lot of people that love him will go, well, that wasn't a great environment for him. Man, you take 40 sacks, they're not all on the offensive line. That's sacks are a quarterback stat, all right? So I think that was something, and yes, it's improved this year in a situation that you got to give Cignetti a lot of credit for. The structure of that offense is amazing for quarterbacks. So I think, number one, dealing with pressure. And the fact is, if he's not flawless mentally against pressure, I don't think he has the athleticism to gift him out of it, right? When you watch, people forget who Josh Allen and even Lamar Jackson were before they were MVPs. When those guys were very young starters in the NFL, they had the break, glass in case of emergency that they could run away from people and create with their legs. And they were just dynamic athletes while they were learning to become professional throwers. And that got them out of a lot of trouble. And look at what the throwers that Lamar and Josh Allen have become, because they had accuracy issues coming into the NFL. Now they're phenomenal in that department in the NFL. So I just wonder with Mendoza's development, if he's in the NFL next year and he's starting in the NFL, and that problem creeps up again, dealing with the rush, dealing with pressure, he's not going to be able to get himself out of it from just raw gifts. It's not possible. So, and I think another thing with him that is, goes back to today's NFL, when he's throwing off platform, when you move him from his spot, and this is why he gets a lot of Jared Goff for better or for worse comparisons, he's not the same guy. The ball is not the same to me. It loses life down the field. And NFL defensive coordinators are going to be like, okay, let's run our pressure through the A-gap. We're not going to say we're going to sack you or even get you to run 100 miles an hour to the sideline. Just move off the spot. Oh, now the arm drops off of 30%. So that's something to me with him as well. When you look
that was the interception against Penn State, by the way. Like that was that exact play.
Exactly. So you have that with him. And then you look at Simpson. He's someone, to me, you're right, Joshua. Like he thinks almost he can get out of it all the time from his athletic gifts. The one thing that stands out, though, to me, too, and this is probably more the nature he hasn't played a ton lately, he does miss throws. He's not the most accurate guy right now. He's got a really good arm. He could drive the ball in the middle of the field. He'll take chances. He's fearless. But there's also times where it's like, that ball just didn't have enough air under it, or he threw a fastball there where the wide receiver needed a little bit of an off-speed throw. But that's why I kind of gravitate more towards him, because I think he has raw tools that can develop out of his warts, where with Mendoza, there might just not be the ceiling for him that everybody wants. It might be a fine NFL quarterback. I don't draft guys that I think are going to be fine NFL quarterbacks with the number 1 overall pick. That's how you get fired.
So it's funny you say all of that, because these are all the things that come into the Heisman conversation about these quarterbacks as well. Connor, before we go, we have to talk about your top 5 overall prospects. You said no quarterback on the list, but Joshua, I'm going to tell you, I got a sneak peek at this, and I noticed a couple of Buckeyes here. So you've got Arvell Reese, Reuben Bain, Caleb Downs, Jordan Tyson, Jeremiah Love. These are some of our favorite players that we've seen this season, but Arvell Reese feels like the biggest climber this season as a whole, right?
Without a doubt. I didn't even have Arvell on this map going into the year, and I've been blown away by this guy because he could do it all. I call him a front seven weapon. It's, I need him to play off the ball on first down. Oh, cool, it's third down. Let's stand him up off the edge and have him dip his shoulder and turn the corner. And he brings the same violence to the run game that he brings to rushing the passer. He's got great size at linebacker, which is one of my pet peeves of today's NFL. And it's a credit to these guys that there's all pros that are 6 feet, 220 pounds at linebacker. But if I was in an NFL defensive staff room, I would gravitate towards somebody that's 6'4" and going to play at 250 pounds, be bigger. Look at the great teams of the NFL. I mean, we just watched Monday night, the Packers and the Eagles. What's the common denominator with the team? They're massive. They all have thresholds of arm length, weight, size, just overall height. Arvell can do that. I had him go number 1 in my latest mock to the Titans, and Titans fans were like, how could you not take us an offensive player? And I was like, well, if we're not doing trades, you got what I think is the best player in the draft, and your defense isn't very good right now anyway. So I think this guy is such a stud.
Let me ask you about Ruben Bain, because I feel like at the beginning of the year, it was kind of Ruben Bain is the top edge guy, like the top defensive player. And the noise has gotten a little bit quiet on him. It feels like people have kind of cooled. What is that coming from?
I guess because naturally when the team loses and you don't have this, you're like the Hulk the first 6 weeks of the year. And this is kind of the problem with the draft. I've done this long enough now that you have to set reminders for yourself. The guy that you loved for 6 weeks, you should still love him just as much even after 2 normal weeks, right? And people... naturally, human nature is they're like, oh, I'm on to the next thing. This guy's playing in bigger games and this guy's having brighter moments. And then we'll watch all the tape collectively over the winter or early in the spring. And it's like, no, this guy's really good. And that's Ruben Bain Jr. with the heavy hands, the dense body. He could set an edge against the run. I still think he has work to do against the run, oddly, for his size. Like you look at him and you're like, oh, you'll never want to run near this guy. But there's times where maybe it's his head down or he loses contain. But the power profile as a pass rusher, the way he could generate speed to power and run through tackles, and it's consistent, his pass rush ability. So once again, going back to the size combo, Bain has NFL size, but then he also has NFL skills. He's not like Shamar Stewart, where it's like, I love the look of this guy. When is he going to be awesome? I think Ruben Bain looks the part and plays the part right now.
So, Connor, the other 3 guys, Caleb Downs, Jordan Tyson, and Jeremiah Love, they were all... well, maybe the running back was debatable, but Caleb Downs was coming into the year, maybe the best defensive player in the country, but certainly you would think the top safety, top receiver, Jordan Tyson. You probably come into the season, the college season, thinking that these guys were the best at their position, best going to be best available. Maybe not Jeremiah Love because you had the Penn State running backs who then weren't as productive as we thought they were going to be this year, but now it's obvious. I mean, it feels like those guys we can pretty much etch in stone here, right? Like these are going to be top positional players at their position.
You just love the floor of all of them. I mean, the only thing I could say about that negatively is Tyson's been banged up throughout his career. I'd like he's going to have to go through medicals to make sure that's not a reoccurring theme. Caleb Downs, the awareness, the physicality, the fact that, hey, I need you to play single high, and now I could play in the nickel, and I could ask you to go match up with Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce or whoever it may be. It goes back to the Arvell Reese weapon conversation. Arvell is the front 7 weapon. Caleb Downs is the back end weapon. And he's just cerebral. You can't miss on Caleb Downs. The combo with him that's going to drive us all insane is how high can you take a safety? It's like going to be the dumbest thing repeated over and over again. And we're going to bring that combo to Jeremiah Love. How high can you take a running back? And since Ashton Genty isn't going to have 2,000 yards this year, everybody is going to be like, you can't take Jeremiah Love in the top 10 because Ashton Genty wasn't an all-pro. And individual conversations are very important with these guys. They're all special players. I think Tyson is going to be, if he's healthy, he's going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL within 3 years, in my opinion.
I could have told people about the Ashton Genty getting maybe a little too overboard last year.
We tried to tell people not to take him in fantasy because that was the obvious one. He was not going to.
Well, they should have listened to you. So
the Caleb Downs portion of this too that I think is going to get weird is I don't think he's the most toolsy safety that you're going to see. And so once we start getting to testing season, I think that there are going to be people who are like, oh, well, do you like this guy for his physical upside over Caleb Downs? Well, Caleb Downs is just a really good football player.
Right. Yeah. And Joshua, the thing that I've really learned the hard way over the last 8 years is, because this applies to off-ball linebacker and safety, is if your IQ and awareness is a 10 and your athleticism is a 7, that's better than somebody with a 9 athleticism and your IQ and awareness that's a 4. Like it makes up for it in that way where, well, you knew where to be, so you're already there, versus the guy that he didn't see it very well. It's post snap. Okay, now I can run a 4.4, but somebody still got hands on me. So, and it's not always that perfect. I mean, dynamic athletes are dynamic athletes making $30 million a year in the NFL for a reason. It's not taking away from them, but it should not take away from the player that Downs is.
Okay, last one before we let you go, Connor. Carnell Tate feels like he could push that conversation maybe for wide receiver 1, or at least
I hated leaving him off that graphic. I hated it.
Well, and we're not just doing this because we have a Buckeye on the show. I mean, like these are going to be some of the top players drafted, but like he's also incredible, and he's having the kind of season, he'll do all the things. And to get the attention he has and the credit he has while playing with Jeremiah Smith, I think shows how good he is. Because I think last year we learned, I mean, we all talked about Emeka Egbuka all season long,
right?
But like everyone's like, oh wow, look at Emeka Egbuka.
I know.
Yeah, he was phenomenal last year at Ohio State.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Okay, so Carnell Tate's on your radar, like really high on it.
Very high. I had an interesting dilemma Monday when we were doing that mock draft on NFL Stock Exchange. I had the Jets at 5. Ty Simpson was off the board. I wasn't just going to take a quarterback just to take a quarterback. That's cheap and lazy. And so the Jets need another wide receiver. And Tyson was gone. And my co-host, Trevor Sickham, asked me like, okay, Makai Lemon or Carnell Tate? And I love both of them a lot. But I went with the player that's 6'3", going to play at 200 plus pounds and really gives you everything. The body control, the vertical juice, contested catchability. You look at him when they throw him screens, he plows forward. Like there's no hesitation to use that physical body. And he separates. It's not a big guy. Like you watch Denzel Boston or a couple of these big wide receivers, and it's Ian Strong from Rutgers is a really good example of this, actually.
Yep.
Ian Strong, like Elikai Manor last year, plays in a phone booth. And it's very hard to do in the NFL. Some guys could do it. T. Higgins, Nico Collins, and maybe Ian Strong could do that as well. Or you get schemed open. With Carnell Tate, he has the size of a lot of these guys, but he gets away from people. He runs away from people. He's detailed in his routes. I've seen improvement from last year to this year, which when you start to see the green light come on for these Ohio State wide receivers where they go from really promising to, oh no, it's real, it's tangible now, you just have so much confidence in them as prospects because they never let you down. Like I've had Garrett Wilson as my number 1 wide receiver before. Jackson Smith and Jigba as my number 1 wide receiver before. Emeka Egbuka. You got to be careful with school scouting, but there's a reason this is happening right now.
It's yes, 100% on the Ohio State wide receivers. Real quick, I'm glad you brought up the Makai Lemon thing because I think that's going to be the deliberation for a lot of people is the production's there. He catches, great at the catch point, but the size is going to be the thing where people are like, I don't know if his value is as high because he's just not a physically, big guy like some of the other receivers they could draft.
Do you have to have him, pay full-time rent in the slot? Like that's, there's nothing wrong with that. And that was criticism of JSN coming out and Justin Jefferson, by the way. Funny how that never gets brought up anymore. Guys develop on the outside, but those guys are bigger than Makai Lemon. And the one thing also I'm trying to figure out with Makai Lemon is I think he has good acceleration and tempo, and his transition from pass catcher to open field runner is super smooth. When you're that size, how fast are you? It's pure speed. And I think he's not slow. I know that, but is he as dynamic as these slot only guys we've seen in the past for a 4-3 kind of wheels? I don't know if I'm expecting that either.
It's going to be interesting. I feel like that's the Emeka thing about the true speed. And it's like, he makes plays. I know the size is different, but those are all the questions that people are going to be asking when they scout Makai Lemon.
Without a doubt, man. And he's awesome. Like he catches everything. We love the player. It's just the NFL scouting side is going to be, okay, maybe like Jordan Tyson a little more, Carnell Tate for certain teams a little more. Makai Lemon looks like a top 10 pick that if he went 23rd, you'd be like, yeah, that's kind of how the NFL treats wide receivers like this.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to end up with the Chiefs, and we'll be like,
and then he'll be amazing, and that'll be that.
How did the NFL let the Chiefs get Mekhi Lemon? This has been a blast, Connor. We could talk your ear off about this. We'll have to have you on again as we get into the postseason, and we kind of look at some of the guys to be paying attention to in the CFP. But just wanted to say, appreciate you as an NFL draft guy who watches college football. Like, it is awesome to be having these conversations with you now and not in February when you finally get around to watching these guys tape. So you are the best. We will have to have you back very, very soon. Thank you for coming on and hanging out with us.
It's always great hanging out with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. That's Connor Rogers, our NBC Sports draft guru. You can find him on social, follow him on all his platforms. He is the best. Huge thanks to Connor for his insights. We're absolutely going to have him back, especially once we get into the playoff, because I would love for him to tell us, here's who to watch and here's how to watch them as we get some of the playoff matchups a little bit closer. We are only a couple weeks away from knowing who is in the playoff, what those first round matchups are, which means we have some really important actual games to talk about here as we get to the walkthrough for week 12. Joshua, let's start with Notre Dame and Pitt. This is a game I don't think anyone had circled until a couple weeks ago. Pitt suddenly emerges as a team with a new quarterback in Mason Heinschel. 5 starts, 5 wins. He's been really good. He's thrown for over 300 yards in almost every single start he's had. It's breathed new life into the Pitt Panthers and made a very intriguing ACC race, playoff race for Pitt, which again, early in the season, I don't think anyone was picturing that. Now it's the toughest game remaining for Notre Dame, who also has playoff hopes and playoff expectations. And now this is one of the most intriguing games of week 12. What you watching for?
Well, I think the quarterback matchup, to your point, is going to be really intriguing. You mentioned Mason Heinschel, and young player comes in and is phenomenal right away. And this Notre Dame defense has been a question to me, and I keep saying it. I think they've gotten better. I think this is one of those games where we find out if they really have, because now you're looking at an offense that certainly can challenge. And then on the flip side with CJ Carr, he's been very, very good this year. However, couple of big games, maybe not his best performances. I go back to the USC game where it felt like he was pressing a little bit to try to make plays. I don't think this is a situation where he should go out there and try to create the plays. I think he should just play the game that comes to him. It'll be good enough. But the quarterback matchup, I think, is key number one in this one for me. And then the secondary storyline is if Notre Dame is going to be a team that is in the college football playoff and they end up winning this game, well, how did their defense look against an offense that has a pulse? We saw them against USC, and the defense certainly did look better in that game. I'd also say, I've seen a couple times now where Lincoln Riley's had to take the long trip and maybe the weather wasn't great. We saw it when they went to play at Nebraska where the offense just didn't look very good. Maybe that was just a USC isn't good in cold weather when they have to go on the road, and not as much Notre Dame's made the improvement. So I'm looking out for that.
Okay, so that's one of the main storylines. Another one is how much this means to Pitt, which you would think that this game meant quite a bit. They're going to have College Game Day there. It's a big moment for the Panthers. Pat Narduzzi, who I love, and he says ridiculous things. He says exactly how he's feeling. He gets asked this week if Saturday's game against Notre Dame is a must win. And he says, quote, absolutely not. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I'd gladly get beat 103 or 110-10 in that game. They could put up 100 on us as long as we win the next 2 after that. That is a wild thing to say. And listen, he's 0-4 versus Notre Dame being at Pitt, whatever. This is such a funny thing to say ahead of a top 25 showdown, ahead of the game day game, a big matchup to say they could beat us by 100. And I don't care. Why on earth would the head coach say that?
Well, I think it's twofold. Is this it's the truth, right? So you're telling the truth. But this is also, I think, a little bit of that, well, Notre Dame needs to join a conference. This isn't a conference game, right? And he's not the only coach that is kind of needled at that this week. And so I think there are a lot of things at play here. Now, where I'm pissed off is he's telling the truth, and that's bothering me right now. I was told that so many more games in November were going to matter, and here's a ranked matchup where game day is going, and literally for one team, they're like, I don't have to show up because it doesn't affect our ability to make it to the college football playoff. That is nasty work. And thanks Narduzzi for reminding us.
Playoff. That's because of Notre Dame's not being in a conference.
Well, no,
dynamic.
it is because of the playoff, because the idea is that if they win the ACC, they're in. Like, that's a part of this. There's no way that Pitt in any other year before the 12-team playoff is in the conversation. Like, it's 100% because of the playoff. And
but they
the
could
playoff
also
was
then
supposed
still
to
lose.
this game matter, and it doesn't matter.
They could still lose by 100 in a different year, and it wouldn't have an impact either. He could have felt the exact same way.
Though, is people were selling me on this game being one of the important games. It's a ranked matchup.
It is, because
it's
if
in November.
Notre Dame loses this game,
it's only important for one team. It doesn't matter.
So, playoff eliminator. It's playoff eliminator.
Could roll up and say, I'm good. I'm good. That's the problem, is the one team that it matters for, the other team could no-show. That's the real problem.
We'll get to another game where it's an eliminator only on one side, which is Oklahoma, Alabama. Alabama could lose.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
they could, but they're not gonna no-show. That's the difference. Like Narduzzi really might just roll out there and be like, they get down 10 points early in the game and he just pulls off his starters. He would do that.
I really hope that doesn't happen.
He would do it.
I think it's more of a Notre Dame dynamic than anything else.
I
we
agree.
did have that conversation.
This is a big commentary on Notre Dame. 100%, but the playoff thing is still always in the background for me.
And I think, you've had a couple of different coaches take shots about Notre Dame's independence this week.
And Joey McGuire.
Including Joey McGuire.
Very weird.
Very weird. He credited BYU for joining a conference after beating them. And then Notre Dame fans got mad about that. But no, I think that's more about that than this. Let's switch
100%.
gears, though, to the Oklahoma-Alabama game. We all remember what happened last year. Oklahoma upsets Alabama. It ends up being one of the main points that keeps Alabama out of the playoff last year at 9-3. They didn't have an offense last year. Now they have the John Mateer offense, which is still mostly whatever he is able to do. But this is a game that I think is really interesting because the rest of the nation has caught up to our concerns about Alabama's run game. 2.2 yards per carry against LSU, total of 56 rush yards. And I looked this up, Joshua. We have talked about how awesome Ty Simpson is and how it's basically a one-dimensional offense, and he's been really, really good. He's only thrown one interception. He's always making plays. 72.2% of Alabama's offensive yardage this season has come in the pass game. That is a crazy percentage. And again, not that Alabama has to be Alabama who they were under Nick Saban, but it's strange that Alabama can't always run the ball. And they can't run the ball when they want to run the ball, which feels like it could be a problem at some point. And maybe it's this game where you do have a very good defense in Oklahoma, the Brent Venables impact. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to come to roost here, but it is something that we're tracking on. And I do wonder, 72% feels like that could be a problem at some point against most teams in the SEC. It hasn't been, but is it going to be when they play a team that can actually defend the pass or at least make it life more difficult on Ty Simpson?
It's going to be an interesting thing. I think this actually is an awful matchup for the Oklahoma defense because of that. I think that their defense is very, very good at making teams have to throw the football. If you have an offense as dynamic as Alabama, that's where they start to run into trouble. I look at the way Ole Miss was able to throw the football around the yard when they played against Oklahoma. And that's what scares me about this. I think that Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and company might go in there and say, F it, we won't run it one time. We won't run it one time. And that's where this game could get a little bit weird because I do think Oklahoma might have trouble in the secondary with some of the Alabama weapons.
You think John Mateer can do much? I mean, he hasn't thrown the ball great, but he's run it a bit. They were able to force some turnovers against Tennessee, which helped the offense be put in some better positions.
Yeah.
What needs to happen for Oklahoma to be in this game?
Well, I think John Mateer having a big game certainly helps. One of the criticisms that I've had, and you've heard me talk about this almost every week with Alabama, is I just don't think they're very stout on either line of scrimmage. And then when you add in a quarterback that can run, which for everybody, the Oklahoma run game does not come from the running backs, which is a problem. But this idea of having the extra rusher with the quarterback has spelled trouble for some teams here. I do think Alabama is improving defensively, though, and I think that they're hitting like the old Alabama teams used to hit on defense. Finally, they look physically imposing, maybe not the most sound defense. in the country, but they've made improvements. But if you get that Mateer magic that we've seen numerous times, we saw it Washington State, we saw it early on in the year at Oklahoma, like this game becomes really interesting. Like to I guess put the context around that, Mateer was what Ty Simpson is in terms of Heisman hype and all that stuff early in the year. If you get that back, now you've got a matchup between two quarterbacks that are Heisman caliber. All of a sudden, it's very interesting.
I will point out that John Mateer is no longer the leading rusher, which he was for this team for a lot of the season. Torrey Blaylock, Xavier Robinson are both have more rush yards than John Mateer. He has more touchdowns. I know what you're saying.
I think that philosophically they're trying to figure out.
You need John Mateer to be running the ball
but you don't want him to be hurt like he got hurt earlier in the year. Like that's the whole push and pull with them.
And Oklahoma's got a brutal schedule, but this is part of the reason. Like you have these opportunities as well to potentially play spoiler. They need to win out to stay in the CFP mix. It is an eliminator for them. They survived their eliminator last week, and now they move on to Alabama. Probably the game of the day, though, also in the SEC, is Texas versus Georgia. We said this earlier, but Texas has the potential to be the most intriguing 9-3 team in the CFP picture. They just need to beat Georgia or Texas A&M, and we're going to have very interesting conversations about this team because at that point, they'll have 2 good losses and 1 bad one to Florida, but you'll have the closest loss to Ohio State. You get a lot of credit for that. You'll get credit for scheduling that game, for going on the road. So they'll be squarely in that conversation, if not like the first team out level in the bubble with Texas, which I'm very intrigued and can't wait to yell about. You also have like Arch Manning's development, how he's looked over the course of the season. He'll get credit for like, oh, they figured some stuff out offensively, or the run game developed and Arch Manning developed as a quarterback. But you got to win one of these. I don't think you need to win both. You said that too. I don't think they need to beat Georgia and Texas A&M. They just need to beat one of them because it'll be one of the best wins in the country. The Georgia game comes at a really interesting time because we have seen Arch play really well in back-to-back games, 6 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 interception in the past 2 games. Georgia coming off of probably their most complete game that we've seen them play. We actually saw them show up in the first half for once. And you have a Texas team that has not played well away from home. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics and something's got to give at some point with this matchup.
Yeah, it's intriguing, right? Like, do we get the full game Georgia or do we just get second half Georgia in this one? Which is going to be a talking point. And I'll go on the Georgia side. Gunnar Stockton, you know how I felt about him at the beginning of the year. Like, I don't think he's that like gifted of a player, but he's a really freaking good player. And so I think he's going to have to continue to do what he's done, which basically is like go out there and have 250, 300 yards to the air and a couple touchdowns and maybe run one in. And I think he's capable of doing that on a week in, week out basis, even though I don't think that he's one of the more gifted quarterbacks playing the game right now. The Georgia defense, I think, has a lot to say about the way this game goes as well. Because when Arch was playing poorly, part of the problem was that offensive line wasn't doing a ton to protect him and give him time and clean pockets to process and throw out of. And this Georgia defense just hasn't been the defense that gets you sacks. It hasn't been the defense that gets you pressures like it's been in the past. But they did it against Mississippi State. And so it's like, have they turned the corner on that side of the football? I love what you said about Texas on the road. And I'm trying to figure out if like part of their road struggles was they were trying to figure out how to get their quarterback right. And every time they had to get him right, they would have to go on the road to do it, which is tough. And then he has that great fourth quarter against Mississippi State. And then obviously got banged up in overtime, but he kind of got right and got his mojo back on the road. Texas got to run it. They've got to have screens in there. They've got to have RPOs in there, and they've got to have some of those Sark shots that he just knows how to draw up. I think that's a pathway to victory for that one. But this game has so many different layers to it. I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, and I think your point about like Sark's game plan is a really good one because we've seen a lot more of what a Steve Sarkisian offense looks like as Arch Manning has gotten more comfortable. Like we could tell that he wasn't calling certain things because Arch looked a little bit like a deer in the headlights and was skip passing the ball to people. So that's what's going to be really interesting again in this matchup as well. just how comfortable he is and what that opens up from an offensive perspective against a defense that, yet to your point about the pressure and the lack thereof for Georgia, it's not the same Georgia defense that won back-to-back titles. Like, you can get some yardage, you can score some points against this team, which is why you've had to have Gunnar Stockton heroics to come back in a lot of games for them this year. It's really interesting. Joshua, I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't have to say this game, but between this and A&M, is Texas going to win one of the two big games on the schedule?
I think they do.
I think they do too,
really
for chaos theory.
Yeah,
chaos
no,
theory.
that's I'm
we need
leaning.
something to yell about for the last 3 weeks of the season.
Yes, I'm wish casting it, but the A&M one I think is, and I think that's at Texas. That one's the one that intrigues me because we talked about it. A&M's won a lot of different ways, but it feels like that could also mean they're a high variance team and something could go wrong on a rivalry weekend.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I remember last year, because it was the return of the rivalry and it was at A&M. And Texas is good at home. That'd be a funny one to come in right heading into conference championship weekend. So some big games. We'll have, as always, our Saturday night recap episode, giving you our thoughts on all of them as they're unfolding. Before we go, we're going to make some underdog picks. We're both under 500 on the regular underdog picks, but some of us are still doing well with their Superdog picks.
You're doing great
so
with
Joshua,
the Superdogs. Build a
why
statue.
don't you go first here? Give me your picks.
You want both of them?
Yeah, let's take them both.
Okay. All right. So I am going to go with Texas to cover the 6 at Georgia. And again, like, the road environment's probably the one thing that scares me, but Georgia against the best teams on their schedule hasn't really been like a pull away team. And, it's been these back and forth wonky games. And I trust Texas in the fact that their defense is going to come up with some timely stops. And I also do trust the fact that Arch is going to be able to throw from some cleaner pockets, where if Texas doesn't win this game, I don't think that Georgia starts running away with it. So I like that one. And then my super dog, Michigan is at Northwestern, really at Wrigley. Northwestern, an 11.5 point dog in that one. Northwestern, scrappy team. I think they're a little bit better than they probably get credit for. I look at the style of game where Michigan's going to want to run the football. I think that plays more into the hand of a Northwestern than what we saw when they played against the USC that wants to throw the football around the yard. In Michigan, young team, they're not going into like a daunting environment, but just they haven't been great against the spread in general. They haven't been super dominant when they had to play on the road this year. It feels like this is a game that sets up for Northwestern to maybe keep it close.
I like both of those. And I feel like we've picked Northwestern at different times this year for that exact reason. My underdog picks, I'm basically picking against two teams that I do not trust at all.
I love the energy.
That's how I decided to make my picks this week. So I'm taking Arkansas plus 5.5 points at LSU. I don't trust LSU in any capacity. The biggest headlines coming out of this program this week were about how, like, Brian Kelly's trying to get paid his buyout and LSU's trying not to pay his buyout. That's what's been happening in Baton Rouge this week. You also had Garrett Nussmeier benched in the third quarter last week of LSU Alabama. He's probably going to get the first reps in this game, but Michael Van Buren, he's the Mississippi State transfer, came in the game. He's also going to play in this game against Arkansas. He, by the way, did not make this LSU offense look any better. It's still inept. It still can't do anything. You have nothing to play for if you're LSU. Last time we saw LSU at home was when all the A&M fans were the only people left in this stadium. It was not a very intimidating place to play. And Arkansas is winless in the SEC, but they have been knocking on the door. One score losses to Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. Feels like they're going to get one. This feels like the right time to do it. So I'm not just saying Arkansas will cover the 5.5. I think they're going to win this game.
I like that.
Bobby Petrino is going to get one. He's going to get one of these games down the stretch.
Insane. It's really insane to think about.
All right. My super dog pick is another team I do not trust. I do not trust Florida State whatsoever. Not after what we saw against Clemson. Okay. This is a team that had actually quite a bit to play for over the rest of the season. Going to play for Mike Norvell to keep his job, finish 8-4, and then 10 points against a Clemson defense that everyone else has figured out. Duke scored 46 points against Clemson and beat them. So I don't trust them after what we saw. And I don't know if they've given up on their season, but we're going to find out pretty quickly. So I'm taking Virginia Tech to cover 14 points at FSU. Their biggest storyline this week was Mike Norvell giving a 6-minute, like, passionate defense of why he should lead this program into the future. He's got elite expectations. We're going to win a championship here in the very near future. I don't know. I don't know
if he's going to be the guy who does it, but they might win a championship. I like Mike Norvell, which is really unfortunate.
And I get what he's doing, and he's fighting for his job. But
I love that about him. But this is back-to-back years has been
back-to-back years, and these are not good ACC teams that they continue to lose to.
That's the part. I think the other thing too is I evaluate that situation. This is like a nice tangent to end the show. It feels a lot like the prime Colorado thing from the standpoint
not
of
going well either. Yeah.
It's hard to see the foundations of actually building a program with the way that they've put together rosters, and he had to get rid of coaches, and like I'm not sure that he's got all the guys that he wants in that building. And that's what scares me more about the record is I'm looking at the infrastructure and saying, do I believe that there's going to be the turnaround? And I'm not sure I trust that part. And that's what's tough about the Florida State situation to me.
It's what's tough with programs that, a big part of the turnaround was hitting on transfer portal players. And then they say they want to be built on high school players, but it takes a little while to see.
But
everybody says it. Is it really happening?
You gotta develop them. You got to make sure that they stick around to play when they're ready to play. Like it's when you get into that portal thing, it becomes really hard to manage the high school kids.
It's actually part of the reason that we should underscore this with Notre Dame. They were doing the 1-year rental at quarterback, and they got out of it. And now you've got a really good quarterback in CJ Carr, who we think is going to be a round draft pick someday. And you're going to get him for multiple years, which I think is really cool. So that's kind of the model. That's what you want to get out of ultimately. So it's going to be really interesting. And again, FSU is a program we talked about this a few weeks ago. Their athletic director put out a statement basically saying, like, we'll evaluate this at the end of the year. Please help me raise $53 million in the meantime, and then we'll see. That's what Florida State's backdrop is right now. And I cannot get over that performance against a tier like Dabo's worst Clemson team, or at least maybe most disappointing Clemson team, because they have a lot of talent. 10 points. That's crazy.
And they got Dabo in the post game grinning. Like
Clemson
everything's good.
They did not think that Tommy Castellanos could do anything to beat them in that game.
I mean, it was insane to see Dabo's demeanor. Like, it's been a very rough year for that man. It's actually kind of humanized him to me a little bit, which is a crazy point that I've never been like the biggest Dabo fan in the world. But like, just to see him have joy from beating Florida State, like just nasty. Their team is terrible. And he had the biggest freaking smile on his face. That's what you did, Mike Norvell. You made Dabo smile this year.
Beating Florida State. Well, that was supposed to be a big game, right? Clemson, Florida State. It was supposed to be a big one for them.
Real quick, before we get out of here, I was running through this rundown this morning as I was putting in my last finishing touches on notes, and I was reading your picks. And for the Arkansas LSU, you said, I do not trust LSU in any capacity. And then for your Superdog pick, Virginia Tech, Florida State, you said, I do not trust Florida State in any capacity. And I died laughing this morning. I laughed so hard because you put the same line in the beginning for both of those teams. And I love that energy.
Yeah, you love haters.
I do.
That's what you love.
I love haters. That was big hate.
We'll see if the hater picks end up helping us with our underdog picks. They have not been very good this season. We will have our Saturday night wrap-up episode, as we always do with Rushing the Field. You'll get it. You can have it with your coffee on Sunday mornings. I cannot believe we are somehow in week 12, but here we are.
Insane.
This has been Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach, and we'll see you this weekend.